Hello, people. Welcome to another edition of Friday Night Knives here on A Dose of Drew. And tonight we are looking at the Vosteed Raccoon. Just a little note here for everyone who's wondering, these are recorded separately and then I just drop them all on the Friday Night Knives. So when I say tonight and all that stuff, it's often a different night for each video or a different day. So that just is the way it is. This is, however, the Vosteed Raccoon. This is one of the newer ones from Vosteed. If you can get it, this is not the button lock. This is the crossbar lock version. Let's see if I can get that. 14C28N steel with a coating. Micarta handles. All right, let's take a look at some of the measurements. A little over 3 inches. Just over 7.5 in overall, about 3 1/4 in overall blade length with a 3-inch blade length and about 7 5/8 overall length. Quick little bit. Dun, 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 dun. Little over 3 ounces too. This is one of the relatively light knives. If you, by the time you watch this, you should probably have seen some other Vosteed reviews out here. This is one of the lighter, outside of the mini nightshade, this is one of the lighter Vosteed knives here, which is a good thing as far as I'm concerned. All right, standard relative measurements. There is the, let's get these back in center here. There is the Spyderco Paramilitary 2 and the PM3 lightweight. For those who know, that's a Lynch Northwest clip. That is that's also a Lynch Northwest clip. I do have an MXG on one of them. All right, so you can see it's right in between, but still closer to the Para 3. Just the tiniest little bit of angle there from the backs being straight. Much closer to the Para 3 in its overall length, but exceeds it in cutting edge, which is not always the Spyderco's strongest suit. There's several other things they're really strong on, but the cutting edge length specifically is not what they go for. And it's just a blur, much closer to the blur size. An interesting little bit there. And not just any leak, but a random leak. And there you are. Nice mid-size, really high flat grind. Lots of good geometry look into this, and the size is right. This is a hard one. But you go right in, it's right up there with the bug out. Man. Civivi Elementum. All right. And of course, my wiener is bigger. All right. No, I never get tired of that joke. Don't ask me why. All right, so let's get into this. The design, aesthetics, mechanics, noteworthy points, intended purpose, cost value ratio, expectations, and any requests. So design. First, this is a drop point, spear point, whatever you want to call it. That is or a modified spear point. We rarely hear modified everything else, but modified spear point is something you never hear. But it is really closer to a modified spear point or a very light drop point, straight and then just drops off. It's kind of like almost a drop clip, or it's really good. Very decent geometry. The action, the design is great as far as compactness, deep carry clip, pretty good ergos. Everything seems to, the angle of the blade, the back angle here, everything tucks in really nice, and that's pretty good. When it comes to the pockets here, there's a little bit, it's a deep carry clip, but there is some of it that comes up. It's not necessarily deeper than the lanyard, which is an interesting bit. And the lanyard hole is chamfered. This actually looks like a G10 backspacer, but it could be my cart. Let me see if I can get that in the light there. It has the feel and look of a G10, not my Micarta backspacer, but it could be my Micarta. It just doesn't look like the rest of the Micarta. Have not taken this apart, as you can hear. Let me see if I can get the... Hear that little swish as it starts to go out. That's still breaking in period, and it's not breaking like that. That's actually it rubbing. That's it rubbing on the on the crossbar. Interesting little bit. This 14C28 and steel, well sharpened. Very nice flat, nice belly, high flat grind, good geometry. Couple of bits on the size of everything as long as we're getting it done. Make sure we're zeroed properly here. And then get some blade stock. Seen this a lot. That's 5/10,000ths of an inch below 3 millimeters or thereabouts. That's a 3 millimeter blade stock pretty much. All right. Sorry, 4 millimeter. Is that right? No, 3 millimeter. Yeah, 4,000ths or 400ths times 3 is it's just under 400. 3937, I believe. That's not quite behind the edge. I need to get this right at the base of that silver part. There we go. 14,000ths right at the behind the edge. Very, very thin behind the edge for those who are aware. Which is good. Very, very slicey. Good geometry. You got a high flat grind, a thin secondary bevel. And if you look, the secondary bevels are really even on this. Is something that I'm starting to notice a lot more on production knives is I'm starting to really pay attention to how even the secondary bevel is on each side. And this Raccoon is one of the better ones. There's a lot of makers who do or do not do it. There's lots of stuff to go in there. And sometimes it's just a matter of a particular production example where it got through and the piece, when it got sat in there just a, again, when you're talking about something that's like 0.5 millimeter is 2/100ths of an inch. If something's off by that, it can definitely affect that secondary bevel because that thing's not even a full millimeter in most places. So yeah, 0.5 millimeter, a few hundredths of an inch, couple hundredths of an inch off, and you have a noticeable bevel difference. Like couple hundredths this way is a couple hundredths longer on this way. So it really starts to become very noticeable. And this one doesn't have it, which is, man, yeah, I'm going to have to take this apart and clean it. Have not done so, have been testing it, but that's a tight crossbar lock right there, putting a lot of pressure. It makes for a very hydraulic, right? You just let go of the thing and it stops the blade. You can, in fact, it's almost impossible to shake it down, so to speak. If I try and go there and then stop it, if I go there and I try and shake it down, it actually ends up going out. So there is a tightness to the crossbar lock I am not used to in others. It's a stiffness I'm not sure I like. When it comes to other ones, I believe it's Kaiser that has adjustable, and I think I've even seen some on these other places where it has an adjustable lock in there. If it's out in the back, it's not necessarily the best. But it's not bad. Aesthetics on this, I like it. It's knifey without being knifey. Just to give me an idea, I'll actually bring another Vosteed in here. We'll get to this in a minute. But that was more knifey. This is more tool looking than knifey, which I think is pretty good. The color scheme is all right. It looks comfortable. It looks usable. It looks like it's got a lot of good features. And it's not overly aggressive. There's some people who really like that, and hey, I do too on certain designs. I'm not going to lie. There's certain designs where you just need it. I tend to like classics, right? I do tend to like classics. And this one's fairly classic. Mechanics on it, as you heard, everything's really put together. The ball bearings in the pivot, there's holes in the skeletonizing of the liner to help reduce weight. There's lots of it in there. Deep carry clip, but just enough so you still have a little bit of room to get a finger there if you need to make sure you can pull that out. So there's just a little bit of room. Small backspacer, one screw, very, 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 very clean on the bit there, and the mechanics are not lost for it. If you're doing, the only thing I will say about the action, if you're flipping it open or you're going out there, you can hear it, but you don't really other than being able to stop the blade anywhere in its travel because of that, it's not really something you notice. And there may be an adjustment in there that I just haven't done, and I can pop it up into a little bit looser and reduce some of that friction on there, on that crossbar. But is what it is. And the ergonomics. So in the saber grip, right, when you get the thumb over the top, even on my, again, large size, large glove in width, medium in length, my large size just barely fits behind that bit of a guard. I got my pinky on the little ramp off here, or off ramp, whatever you want to call it. And if you had much bigger, you'd probably be, stretching. It's a little bit far back for larger hands. That being said, on the choke up or in the pinch grip, oh my goodness, this really shines. Reverse grip, yes, of course. Rolling it upside down, like if you're going to get into an envelope or if you need to get anything like that, it actually has a really, really good thumb stop that allows you to get in there and do some really good work. And so it does that really well. And relative, it's not an acute point, but it's a very, very distinct one. Good belly, good taper. It's well done on the mechanics. It does piercing very well. It is very much so. Thin, easy slicing. It's got a nice thin grind. It'll move through material great, fantastic. Heavy material, it's still got plenty of solidness to it. That secondary bevel's gonna move. The coating, I find it nice to maintain, consistency with the styling. It's less of a thing to me. I care more about the black hardware and the black clip than I do about the coating on the blade, but as long as it maintains a consistent theme as far as styling goes, I'm good with it. It really doesn't hurt the mechanics. And the high flat grind really does make it go through things like cardboard and heavier material better. And as I was saying, with the thinness behind the edge, very, very good apexing. 14C28 can take a wickedly sharp edge. This one is no slouch. Right? No slouch whatsoever. For those who understand why. Oh, wow. I don't know if you can see that little shaving bit there, but sharp enough to shave paper. If you think that doesn't mean it's sharp enough to shave hair, I don't think you understand sharpness, because I can pretty much cleanse my body of hair with this little scalpel, this little razor blade. Very, very good on that. Very, very good edge. Very, very good bits. And the comfort when you're up in a choked up position is useful. Yes, you can, if you've got the three fingers, so you got the finger on top where you're trying to do like scoring and you got your thumb on there, the three fingers have plenty, and there's plenty of room for really big fingers. And it makes this knife useful in a lot of ways. Yes, you can go like this, but you can also get a lot more. Yes, you can do this. It does it all. And it does it all pretty darn well, honestly. Where did I always seem to lose my little test surface? Well, we'll use the Knives Plus thing. Okay, so if you're doing the scoring or the flat, like, there's plenty of room. And in fact, you can get way down and then pull. So draw cuts, score cuts, all that sort of stuff. Lots of versatility, right? Lots and lots of versatility. And I can't see this as being anything more than extraordinarily versatile. I really can't. This is an EDC monster in disguise. It's a raccoon. Hey, let's call it Rocket, right? Okay, let's just go with it, because my goodness, this thing's good. And wow, does it do EDC? Yes, you could probably even do some tough stuff. I hate to see if this thing is down at like 59. I've seen it where they say that it's like 58 to 60 or something like that. And they say, let me just put this out there. 58 HRC 14C28N is a waste of the steel. It should be in the 60 to 61 range. to get the most out of the steel, the most toughness, along with the most edge retention. This steel needs to be in the 60 to 61 HRC range. So I'm hoping that's what they're shooting for. But it is a nice one. And, you know, when they say what they're shooting for, that's kind of when I start to get into this cost to value ratio. Because it's good. Most of Vosteed's knives are in that $50 to $70 range, right? So if you go out there looking, you can expect to spend something like that on most of their knives, which are pretty good. And this one presents one of the best cost to value ratios of all their knives I've tried. The Raccoon is, I love the mini nightshade. It does make me want to try the large nightshade, but those are perennially sold out, which makes me believe those are probably pretty good too. And I'm just really having a lot of trouble finding a lot of faults with this knife. I really am. Its value is high. Its cost is low. It really is it's a decathlete. It's an all-around achiever. It does almost everything great with a very, very well-known good EDC blade, drop point blade for comparison. Yeah. It's at least as good as that. It's just all around great. And for an intended purpose of EDC extraordinaire, this actually delivers. Could I stand a more upscale version? Yeah, I could even take it with 154 CM, right? I would really love to see this with 154 CM. I'm not going to lie. This would be a great blade style for 154 CM as well, and still maintain this similar price range. If I were to go up, of course, Magna Cut's always great. We always love Magna Cut, but to be perfectly honest, I would love to see something like S45 VN, even S35 VN. I think S35 VN, I don't want to let its ubiquitousness take away from how good that steel is. I mean, we're talking something that is literally twice as tough as D2, has the same edge retention and much better corrosion resistance. So it's a very, very, very good steel. But if you're going to do particle metallurgy on something like this, I would prefer something like CPM 154. To be perfectly honest, it might up it a little bit, but probably not that much. It probably really wouldn't. You could probably get a relatively small bump in price for that steel. And that's the problem with the 154 CM and CPM 154. 154 CM is relatively cheap as well. It's not much different as far as what the tool costs and all that sort of stuff is as far as tooling, because it's all the same material, so you can use all the same belts and everything. The stock material isn't that much more expensive, even though it is. I've looked on their website. I can see the spreadsheets and everything like that, just like everyone else, about what it costs on large. It's just not that much more expensive in bulk to buy the CPM 154. So quite honestly, if I were to say that there was a steel I would like to see this in that would still maintain a bit of budget while getting that particle steel, would probably be CPM 154. I would go with S35 yen, but CPM 154 would probably be the one. But right now, we're seeing a lot of knives in S35 yen right around the $100 mark, and have seen it like that before. So it does there's trade-offs, right? I could do either one of those. CPM 154 just a little bit tougher, and S35 yen a little bit more edge retention. You get a trade-off. That being said, my expectations for this knife were actually high. Having tried a couple of other Vosteeds, my expectations for this knife were high. And they were not disappointed. In fact, this is easily, one caveat, no nightshade except for the mini. And the mini I'm going to take out. This is easily my favorite normal size knife out of the Vosteed collection. I have not tried them all, but out of the few that I have, this is my favorite. And in fact, I'll even put the ones that I've tried. Here's the shootout of these Vosteeds that I've got right here. Right. Out of these, very similar size, similar idea, EDC stuff. This one's too heavy. As nice as it is, it's just too heavy for me to carry around as much. The Trek lock on this, if you watch the bit on here, is just too, I don't want to say unsafe because they've done a lot to it. It's just, it doesn't have the safety features I'd like to see a button locked in. There's the possibility this could come loose when you need it the most and not only fail it as task, but cause you injury. That leaves this one. Now the mini nightshade, actually I like better, and if I ever get my hot little hands on a full-size nightshade, that could possibly change. But right now, the Raccoon is easily my favorite Vosteed. And that's, any requests I have, just better materials, just higher quality materials. Give me a premium version of this. It doesn't even have to be that great. If you can do it, my Carta is great with the nested liners. I would buy a ramped up version of this. I really would. I wouldn't the other ones. Other people would. I would buy a ramped up version of this steel, of this knife. It's the only one that's got a plug on the other side. Approximately the same price. The crossbar lock on this one works really good. The tension non-withstanding. Haven't really checked it out yet to see if I can adjust that. It's really, really good, you guys. This thing has such great sliciness. And sometimes you want to try and say like, oh, all the parts add up to this, and that's what makes it great. And one of the things I got to say about that Raccoon, and you're not going to hear me say this very often, the Raccoon actually works to come up to be just a little bit more than the sum of its parts. Yes, you have a deep carry pocket clip that could have been moved back, could have easily been moved back. But when you're in a pinch grip, it feels really good. If you're in a saber grip, for me, it's that little lift kind of cradles my middle finger knuckle right there. So it's comfortable without a hot spot. If I choke up, it's sitting inside somewhere. It's actually well thought out in placement to provide a low level of hot spots. It's got really good steel that can hold an edge and is relatively tough and can be sharpened to a wickedly sharp edge. It's got a sharpening choil that gives you tons of room for sharpening as well as for a finger. Lots of choke up options, and including up to, if you can see that, right up to the thumb size, which give you a little bit of kind of leverage right there to maintain your torsional rigidity and control. Saber grip, you can really get back if you need. It's not as easy to monkey fist it. And if you choke up right, it's not really set up for that. But in a saber grip, if you need to really, really get in and start, you can drive like almost in a sawing motion, right? You can drive that tip in. You can choke up and get tons of control, or choke up for control and power to really maintain your continuous use without your fingers getting too tired. Can this handle it? Yeah, it's got the crossbar locks have multiple shear points. In order to make these fail, you're either going to have to shear bolts or bend the liner. So you're running into full, let's say, catastrophic failure of the entire structure if that were to happen. Pardon the sip of water. And that's why there's not a lot of requests here except for more materials. And that makes this an extraordinary, of all of the knives outside, again, the mini nightshade, or the Shilin, Shilin, the mini nightshade. This is the most recommendable Vosteed I've tried. This is absolutely the most recommendable Vosteed. It is a great little EDC knife. It is done so well. It has such a great slicing geometry. The design was very well thought out. You can tell that someone used this and put thought into it, which is really, really good to see. They put a significant amount of thought and consideration. Even the pivot things going just above there. You can see how the pivot screws, I don't mean that I mean, that, right? It gives you a point on your fingers where if you need to be a little more gentle, you can really pinch that spot, and it gives you something without visual confirmation of where you're at. That's actually really cool. It also gives you very easy confirmation of your thumb when you're in particular grips. And I actually like that kind of grip on here. It gives you some tactile feedback as to where your hand is, as opposed to having to look at it or just get used to it. You can immediately feel it. It makes it easy to get used to because you have tons of tactile feedback. And that's great on the design. I think the aesthetics are actually really cool. This looks like a knife that has a lot going on as far as ergonomics and what it might be capable of, and it delivers. I don't want to say flawless mechanically, but when the single greatest flaw I can find is this, that there's a little bit of high tension on that crossbar and it gives it a little bit more friction than I would like. That's very subjective. And that's really the only mechanical. I could get nitpicky about, gee, there's, around this, there's the micarta's a little rough when they rounded it, like they could have polished. I'm not going to, not at this price point, not at all. And that's kind of go. Its intended purpose is to be an EDC beast, an all-around extraordinary tool, or something like Rocket Raccoon itself. It does seem to have that as an intended purpose, and it delivers at a very, very, very good cost, or cost to value point. It delivers tremendous value at a mid-range cost, at a high low end or low mid-range. It's right in that transition. Again, $50 to $75 is an incredibly competitive area, right? There is so much here, and I'm going to have to pull a couple of others out here. When we start talking about this range of cost, this is cost to value craziness right here, right? It's all, but here's the thing. It holds its own. It delivers its own set of values. It succeeds in distinguishing itself in a place where all too often a thing very few knives do, and does it at a really good price for a lot without leaving a whole lot lacking. There's not, if this were to be, I don't know about me, but for the sake of argument, if this were to be all of a sudden all the rest of my knives disappeared and I had a couple of sharpening stones, or like something like that, and I had to use this for a year as my only knife, I could easily see it would be I could use this knife as my only pocket knife and it would still be a great value. There's very little I do on a daily basis that this can't do. And believe me, if you're someone like me out here doing a YouTube channel, that is so far from your only criteria when it comes to the knives. But that is something I wanted to bring out there. And it's really hard to not keep singing the praises of this knife, because it is very well done. I have to give Vosteed a ton of credit on the Raccoon, because they really did do a great job and made a great EDC knife that I can highly recommend. And as that, it's going to be one of the few knives where I sit here and say, this is a 5-star knife. If there's anyone looking for a pocket knife, the only reason to not recommend this knife is if they're not willing to spend this much money. And it's still going to be a really easy thing. Look, you spend another 10 or 20 bucks or something like that, and you can get this. There's no reason not to recommend this knife to someone looking for a pocket knife. They may want a button lock or something, or you may want to try another one, but the solidity, validity, and just outright consideration for the user that this knife represents makes it a great buy and highly recommendable. And it makes this video a bit long because I have really spent time trying to talk about the virtues and the values of this knife, and it's not easy to run out of things to say. It's actually pretty cool. But as it sits, I am going to go ahead and give it a shot anyway, because let's see, where did it go? Anyway, because this is a package piercer, a saran wrap slicer, a cardboard carver, and an envelope eviscerator extraordinaire. And that makes it good. It makes it highly recommendable, and it's something that, well, honestly, if you're a collector, you may not want, you may not be someone who likes budget knives or high value knives. I do. I actually prefer to collect more of these than the higher end ones because I'm not necessarily trying for resale. But this is a really good value knife. It really, really is. So yeah, hard to not keep saying this is great because it is. But I am going to end the video there. 5 stars, highly recommendable. One of the top Vosteeds and really one of the better all-around EDC pocket knives that's out there. It's lightweight, well-made, good materials, and it's going to last a while. So there you go. This has been the review of the Vosteed Raccoon, and it is a 5-star recommendable EDC knife. So go ahead, take this video, watch it twice, comment as much as you like, be mindful of side effects. Remember to like and subscribe. This has been your dose of Drew. I am said Drew, and you guys have a great rest of your night.